Hello everyone, my name is Brian Tinkler, and today we're going to be talking about veteran PTSD and suicide. Did you know that every single day in the United States, 22 veterans suffering from PTSD or another psychological disorder choose to take their own lives and commit suicide? PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental disorder that can be acquired after suffering from one or more traumatic events. These traumatic events can include a serious accident, sexual assault, child abuse, or warfare. And symptoms for this disorder can include general depression, disturbing thoughts or feelings, paranoia, and insomnia. Up until the 1970s, the United States military and government as a whole viewed PTSD as shell shock or combat neurosis because they didn't have a full grasp of how serious the mental disorder actually is. It's very serious for veterans because when they return home, their current lives at home and experiences they had overseas tend to mesh together, and it's hard to discern from reality and dream. Wearing a uniform and carrying around a rifle for days on end during deployments don't just wear off when you come home. And experiences they've had, such as seeing their friends die, or taking another person's life, or the constant stress and paranoia they're under during deployment, don't just wear off when they come home. But why does this matter? Well, at the end of 2018, it was recorded that there were 18 million veterans currently living in the United States, meaning you likely do have a neighbor or relative who is a veteran from the military service. But how would you feel if one day you found out that they took their own life because they were suffering from a psychological disorder you didn't know about? Or maybe you're living with someone who has PTSD, and you see some signs here and there, but you don't really know how to help. Or maybe you are yourself living with PTSD, and you want to know what others can do to help and support you. Well, how do I relate? Well, as a current member of the United States Navy Reserves, I have friends in the military. And I wouldn't know what to do with myself if one of them one day took their own life because they were working too hard or living an unhealthy lifestyle while in the military. I want services such as counseling and support for me while I continue my military career if I do ever need them. So overall, the government is not doing enough to support military veterans, and as a community, we must band together to support these veterans. I'm going to be talking about the statistics regarding PTSD and suicide among veterans, current treatments that are present but not viable, and what we can do as a society to help these members deal with PTSD and prevent them from committing suicide. But first, we got to tackle the numbers and find out what impact PTSD and suicide are having on veterans. Well, veteran numbers for PTSD and suicide are rising and are very high, and often their symptoms go unnoticed among peers. 60,000 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans were surveyed by the United States National Library of Medicine National Institutes of Health in 2016, and it was found in them that 13.5 to 30% of them had some experience from PTSD, which means, tracking back to 2003 to 2006, it was estimated that there were nearly 500,000 members of the military suffering from PTSD. And the Armed Forces and Society has also concluded that these rates are high, and they can often be due to friends being killed in combat, taking other people's lives, or being under constant stress and paranoia while in deployment. To conclude with these numbers, 8% of the general population has PTSD. And 12 to 20% at the Medical Burn Center by the Journal of Trauma in 2009 were suspected to have PTSD as well. But the interesting thing about this statistic, that 12 to 20%, is that these were all members who did not have any physical injuries when returning home from being overseas deployed, meaning that their entire impact felt from being in the military is psychological. So the current resources available by the government are not viable and effective for supporting veterans, and these resources include inpatient treatment, group counseling, and peer therapy. That same source, the United States Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health in 2016, also stated that your discharge from the military affects your access to health benefits through the Veteran Affairs. And the Senior Veteran Service Alliance added on to this by saying in 2014 to 2015, there were roughly 209,000 people discharged from the military throughout the entire United States. And 15.45% of these received something other than an honorable or general discharge, And those are the two required to have access to military benefits after being discharged, which means that 32,000 people of that 209,000 will not have access to health benefits for the remainder of their lives from the Veteran Affairs. And finally, the social psychiatry and psychiatric epidemiology stated that even after being discharged from Veteran Health Administration and Veteran Services, members are still committing suicide and taking their own lives. Specifically, between 2005 and 2010, when this study was done, they found that a year after being discharged from medical service, 929 male veterans committed suicide. That's over 180 per year in this single study alone, which is much greater than the 22 average we found earlier. So we must take action to support these veterans, and the first thing we need to be doing to help them is for the breaking the stigma around PTSD. The current stigma around PTSD is that only people who are outcasts or lesser than human beings are affected by it, but that is not even close to true. PTSD can happen to anyone, no matter their background. And the Psychiatric Rehabilitation Journal has found that there is a stigma regarding this, that those who have PTSD are often viewed as crazy or aggressive. But that's exactly the opposite of what needs to be said to help them. If we can break this stigma and show them that it is okay to have these problems, then they are more likely to get treatment and seek help. Now, these people are going through a very difficult time, and they need to be able to determine what they need to do to solve their PTSD. But we can do very small things throughout the day to help them cope with their symptoms, such as saying hello, checking in on them, inviting them over to dinner, and showing them that you care about them will mean worlds to them. And these veterans gave their time, energy, and lives to defend their country's freedom. But we must support and help them in dealing with their psychological disorders that they received while serving. So the numbers are growing, the support in place is not helping them, and we must band together so we can solve and defeat PTSD. So currently, I believe that the United States government is not doing enough to support our veterans, and we as a community can do better. So let's save a life today. Let's ensure that those overseas right now can come home to open arms, open hearts, and open ears as they deal with the traumatic experiences they had while being deployed on the other side of the world. Thank you.